Live from the campus of Oklahoma State University, the American Public Works Association, in cooperation with OSU, is proud to present today's interactive video conference, using asset management to protect investment.
Well, I'm delighted to be here with you today, and I'm also very fortunate to be on a panel of such esteemed colleagues. They're acting very well behaved comparison to last night at Eskimo Joe's here in Stillwater. This is my first time in Stillwater, and we were taking a van from Oklahoma City yesterday from the airport. And Patricia Cutt was with us, and she pointed out that the State Fair was just ended here in Oklahoma. And I was really thinking, just in introduction to my topic, the last time I went to the State Fair, which was just summer, I took my son Chris, he's 8 years old, and he asked if he could bring a couple of his friends, Chip and Travis. So I said, sure. So we got there, and we got through the turnstiles. We got there very early, and Chip goes ahead, and he says, Mr. Hansen, when can we go to the Midway? And I said, well, before we go to the Midway, what we're going to do is we're going to go see the livestock. I said, that's the place that my parents always took me, and so that's where we're going to go first. And then we went to the livestock and, saw a bunch of animals. And we get out of there, and Travis, it's another classmate of my son's, goes, he says, Mr. Hansen, when can we go to the Midway? And I said, well, California, we've got to go to the Panning for Gold exhibit. So we went there. And we learned how to pan gold and all that. So we get out of that, and my son finally looks at me and he says, Dad, look, would you just tell us what we have to do to go to the Midway? And so I huddled up the guys, and I said, look, what you need to do is, because we hadn't gone to the county exhibits yet, always a big one. And I said, look, each of you have to go into this building, and you have to tell me 5 different counties in California. I have no idea how many counties there are. Maybe I should. And so I found a nice park bench. It was a hot day, had a beer, and I thought, okay, that's a good 20, 30 minutes. And sure enough, they come out 5 minutes later. Now, they each had to be different. So I said, well, Chip, do you have 5 counties? He rattled off 5 counties to me. And then Travis, do you have 5 counties? Rattle off those 5 counties. And Chris did too. I said, what happened? He says, well, Dad, all you had to do is tell us what the deal was to get to the Midway. And really, that's the point of my talk. The purpose of my talk today, what that's going to be, is to really tell you what you need to get to the Midway, and tell you the kinds of things that you have to do to bridge the gap between this perceived operation of municipal workers and some of the investor owners that are out there, because there is a real storm brewing in competition for those assets. So whether you're today a municipal worker, whether you work for a privatization company, really, what are the tools that you need to help bridge that gap? So as we take a look at the past, things have been pretty simple. We've needed to build infrastructure, so we've got large financings to go ahead and build the assets that we need. And through the years, things have gotten a little bit more complicated. I showed this slide a couple of weeks ago in the city of New York, one of our clients, and there was a voice from the back of the room, and he says, boy, what an old photograph. And if you really zoom in, there's a guy in a straw hat up on the bridge kind of overlooking. I said, well, stop the presentation. I like interaction. I said, well, how do you know it's old? And he says, well, we've added to it since then. So really, I think the process of building new assets and maintaining all the good issues that have been brought up have been very powerful. But over the last couple of years, we've really hit a couple of roadblocks. I don't know if I saw this particular sign on the drive up from Oklahoma City into Stillwater, but these signs now are popping up all over the place. And I really think it had a lot to do with 3 years ago when Stephen Goldsmith decided, the mayor of Indianapolis, decided to privatize the sanitary sewer and stormwater system at Indianapolis. So not only had he privatized the airports and the treatment plants, now for the very first time he was putting up to bid for a 5-year contract to do pipelines and to do the operation and management for that. Well, what happened in the first part of this year? Milwaukee Metro. It wasn't for 5 years this time, but for 10 years now, we have a firm that, as far as January of this year, took over the operation and maintenance, not only of the treatment plant, but of the interceptor system as well. In fact, I was in Atlanta last week, and I bumped into Ann Spray-Kinney. Ann has been doing a lot of speaking about the Milwaukee privatization. And she gets a lot of questions, a lot of phone-ins, just like we're having here. And it was very interesting. She says, you know, I got one card, and it had 3 questions. And I said, well, what were the questions? She says, well, the first question was, how can you have prevented privatization? The second question was there any way you could have stopped the process of privatization once it got started? And the third question was, is it possible to go back from privatization? So it's kind of an interesting area where we are now. And last week on Tuesday, the City Council of the City of Atlanta approved not a 10-year or 15-year, but a 20-year contract to outsource the water distribution system and the water treatment plants. The interesting thing is, this week, the successful bidder will be signing the contract. The takeover is scheduled for December 1. That process from publishing of our RFP to a contract award was less than 8 months. The interesting thing, and we've been talking a lot about return on assets and investments, they are promising a 44% reduction in operating expenses for that utility. So quite astounding. What else is going on? Well, in 2 weeks we have some very interesting elections going on and local bids. Birmingham, if the election goes the way that the mayor would like to sell its assets and get for it approximately the book value of the assets. Interesting regional election that's coming up, or a bond issue. And our friends up in Canada, Region Appeal. I was up in Canada last week, and I was just amazed at the number of amalgamations going on. I think a lot of the people south of the border have heard about the amalgamation of Toronto, the mega city, and the combination, but I think very few people realize across Canada, especially Ontario, of how many amalgamations of cities are going in to try and squeeze out economies of scale now. Well, and the Region of Peel now has come up to bid on some of their privatization efforts, and I know that's just about coming up. So, you know, we obviously have some things. Now, I don't know whether this is political requirements from mayors, whether it's a way to help us through some of the capital expenditures that we have, whether we're responding to hungry media. But a big question is,